Today on Histopedia, we're diving into one of the most infamous events in American history, a moment that ignited the flames of rebellion and set the stage for the American Revolution. On the night of March 5, 1770, tensions between American colonists and British soldiers reached a boiling point. But what exactly happened that night? Why did a confrontation between a few soldiers and an angry mob turn into a massacre? And how did this tragic event become the catalyst for the American Revolution? This is the story of the Boston Massacre, a pivotal moment in the struggle for independence. In the years leading up to the Boston Massacre, tensions between the British and American colonists were at an all-time high. Following the end of the French and Indian War, Britain found itself deeply in debt, around $140 million, which was roughly 2.5 times its annual revenue. To recover, the British government began imposing a series of taxes on the colonies, including the infamous Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Acts of 1767, and others. These taxes were designed to raise revenue without the consent of the colonies, enraging the colonists who felt they were being unfairly taxed without representation in Parliament. Boston, a hotbed of resistance, was where these tensions would come to a head. By 1770, British troops had been stationed in Boston to maintain order and enforce the unpopular laws. In fact, by the time of the Boston Massacre, there were 2,000 British soldiers in Boston, compared to only 16,000 colonists in the city. The sheer presence of British soldiers in the city was a constant source of frustration for the locals. Colonists, many of them working class and struggling under the heavy taxes, frequently clashed with the soldiers, who were seen as foreign oppressors. March 5, 1770, started like any other day, but as night fell, the tensions reached a tipping point. A group of colonists, frustrated with the soldiers' presence and the ongoing oppression, began to taunt and harass a lone British sentry standing outside the customs house. The situation quickly escalated when a crowd of about 50 colonists gathered, hurling snowballs, ice, and insults at the soldier. The soldiers were already on edge due to months of simmering hostilities, and soon additional soldiers arrived, with Captain Thomas Preston commanding the troops. As the crowd grew larger, the situation became more chaotic, with some colonists pushing, shoving, and continuing to provoke the soldiers. In the chaos, someone gave the order for the soldiers to fire. Without clear orders and under immense pressure, the British soldiers opened fire into the crowd, killing 5 colonists and wounding several others. Among the dead was Crispus Attucks, a man of African and Native American descent, often remembered as the first martyr of the American Revolution. Attucks had been a sailor and is believed to have been at the front of the mob when the soldiers opened fire. His death, as well as that of the other victims, made the massacre all the more symbolic. The massacre was, of course, not just a skirmish. It was a tragedy that would have lasting repercussions. But what happened next is what truly transformed this bloody incident into a revolutionary spark. The colonial leaders, including Samuel Adams, quickly seized on the event. Samuel Adams, a key figure in American resistance, was instrumental in organizing a town meeting, which led to the formation of the Boston Committee of Correspondence, a group dedicated to spreading information about British abuses. Adams painted the incident as a deliberate attack on innocent colonists, even though the situation was more complex. The killing of 5 civilians, especially in a place as symbolically important as Boston, was an emotional rallying point for the colonists. Paul Revere, famous for his midnight ride, played a crucial role in spreading anti-British sentiment by producing an engraving of the massacre. His image depicted the British soldiers as merciless murderers firing into a peaceful crowd. The engraving, which was widely circulated throughout the colonies, fueled public outrage. In the engraving, the soldiers are shown firing at a group of unarmed colonists, though historical accounts suggest that some of the crowd may have been armed with sticks and other improvised weapons. This image and the subsequent protests were crucial in uniting the colonies against Britain. But let's not forget the trial. Despite the outrage in Boston, the British soldiers involved in the massacre were put on trial. The trial was highly controversial. Many colonists were adamant that the soldiers had acted out of aggression and should be punished. Others, like John Adams, a future president and patriot, believed that the soldiers had acted in self-defense. In the end, 2 of the soldiers were convicted of manslaughter and branded on the thumb, while the rest were acquitted. The trial, while controversial, highlighted the growing division between Britain and the colonies. The Boston Massacre became a symbol, a rallying cry for the growing colonial resistance. It was the perfect storm of tragedy and propaganda, and it gave colonists the justification they needed to push for independence. The massacre wasn't just about 5 men who lost their lives. It was about the oppressive nature of British rule and the threat it posed to the colonists' freedom. It sent a clear message that British authorities could not be trusted to protect American interests. The fallout from the Boston Massacre didn't just stop with outrage, it gave birth to greater unity among the colonies. From this moment forward, colonial resistance began to grow stronger. By 1774, the First Continental Congress was established to coordinate resistance against British actions, and soon the conflict would turn into all-out war. The massacre laid the foundation for what would become the American Revolution. What started as a tragic incident became a pivotal turning point in the quest for independence. The Boston Massacre wasn't just about 5 colonists killed by British troops. It was the catalyst for a revolution that would change the course of history. It was a clear signal that the American colonies were no longer willing to accept British rule. The spark had been lit. This moment in history is not just a tragic tale of violence, it's a reminder of the power of propaganda and the role of public perception in shaping history. The Boston Massacre helped to galvanize a nation, igniting a series of events that would ultimately lead to the formation of a new, independent country. It wasn't simply about the actions of a few British soldiers and the deaths of 5 colonists. It was about the colonists' desire for freedom, autonomy, and justice in the face of foreign oppression. The massacre served as a clear illustration of the deepening rift between Britain and its colonies, one that would only continue to grow as the years went on. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time here on Histopedia for more history videos.